Hey bro, how you going?
Good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, good man. Thanks so much for doing this interview.
Oh,
Um,
thanks for
yeah,
having me.
cool. Okay, so let's get straight into it. I've got a few questions here already set up. Okay,
Yep.
so how did you get into music? So these are quadruple barrel because I know you have a lot of experience. You've got over 20 years of experience. So these questions are quadruple barrel, but here we go. How did you get into music? When did the switch turn on? I'm going to turn my passion into a living. And tell us about your early journeys into getting to be a professional musician.
Oh, wh- when did I start? How did I get into music? I think it was at school. We had to play an instrument at school. I'd never thought of playing an instrument. So we were at the school that we both went to. We were required to play an instrument,
Yeah.
and basically, I wanted to play drums, but my parents wouldn't let me because it
Oh,
was too
okay.
loud.
Yep.
So I
Yep.
did guitar instead.
Yep. So James got the younger brother treatment.
He
Yeah.
got through. The third brother was allowed to play drums.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and then when did I decide to make it a living? I think it kind of fun. I was actually working as a musician before I decided to actually make it a job. I actually remember the day quite clearly. I think I was kind of playing with a few bands. I was already teaching. This was by the time I was about 20.
Yeah.
I'd
Right.
been playing, with you and other bands around town. I think there was one day, it was a beautiful day in spring or something, and I'd been rehearsing and jamming with some people, and then went to teaching to go and start teaching my students. And I was like, oh, actually, this is what I'm going to make my job from now on.
Oh, excellent.
Um,
Excellent. And what was so that covers your early journeys into getting into being a professional musician. Now you worked on some pretty cool gigs like the Saphires, the musical, based on the Hollywood movie The Saphires, with Casey Donovan, the Australian Idol winner. Tell me, how does one land a gig like that as a session musician? And take me through the technical preparation right through to the music biz side of things, the do's and don'ts to land a gig like that.
Firstly, we should clarify they based the movie off us.
Oh, right.
Yeah, it was actually that production had been put on by, I forget which Melbourne. I think it was Melbourne Theatre Company in 2007 or 2008, and then we were a relaunch of that show. While prior to us going out and while we were doing it, they were in production of the movie, like very early pre-production of the movie.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. How did I get that gig? Probably a pretty standard story in music. It was basically I was called by a good friend of mine, Ben Collins, who I'd worked with for years already.
Nice.
And he was in charge of booking the band for the Western Australian leg of that tour.
Yeah.
And he called people that he knew he'd worked with before and he knew were possibly available and also able to do the gig. So it was mostly there was no I never auditioned or approached anyone to put myself in a position to do that gig aside from just having, I guess, worked at a reasonable level before that where people trusted me to do that show and I got the call for it.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's
Yeah.
backtrack a bit. How do you like? Because this is about helping people guide them through different career choices,
Mm.
whether they be music or creative advertising or whatever. How do you get yourself in that position? So that goes to I guess like the music biz part of it. Like, how do you get yourself in a position where people trust you?
Cool. Well, maybe I think there's some really basic things, and maybe it's more. I mean, jumping around in time a bit now, but it's been really apparent in the last 2.5 years while I've been living in the United States.
Yep.
Because in reality, back in Perth, as a professional musician, we're not gigging a lot. So there are other things like teaching or sound engineering that won't with that. But it's been very apparent in Las Vegas, in particular, where I've been working, that to garner that kind of trust and make yourself one of the kind of higher people on the call list, it always goes back to those basic things. In my job, all you really need to do is turn up on time, know the music, and be a nice guy.
Awesome.
I don't think that any of the work that I've done over the last 20 years, any of the employment stuff it's had maybe 3% to do with my abilities on the instrument.
Nah, man, you're awesome on
No, but quite honestly, that you can be, I could be the greatest guitarist in history if I turn up to work late or no, or I don't know the music or I get on everyone's nerves, they won't call you back
Yep, true, true.
every single time. So that, 20, 30, 40 hours of work at home every week is required and expected. But when you turn up for the work, preparation and being a good human being will go a lot further than being able to show off on the guitar every single time. Like I can't. Every first gig I've got has probably been because of how I play.
Mhm.
Every time I've been called back for it is because I was prepared and made it easy for the people that were running the show or the gig every
Yeah,
single time.
yeah, well, I've known you for years and you're a fantastic guy. And that also actually covers my next question was the do's and don'ts of how to land that gig. So let's move on to the next question. So what are your proudest jobs you've landed and why?
Ooh, proudest. I was extremely happy to be able to do that Sapphire's gig that years ago.
Yeah,
So that was kind of probably the first really big thing that I'd done, which, traveling the world and doing the same show and playing with some really great musicians.
fantastic.
Um, and then, oh, it'd be hard to pick one, but the gigs that excite me the most are usually the ones where I feel like I'm the worst musician on the gig. They're the ones that excite me and that I'm happy I go. If I step onto the into the rehearsal or the stage and realize that everyone in the room is better than me and is going to make me lift my game, they're the ones that I'm always excited about. And um, I don't know if proud is the word, but I'm happy to have done them. There are a couple like over the last couple of years, like getting to play with in a couple of little places with people that have played with Santana and those kind of high level acts. When you
Wow.
get on the stage and you're like, all right, cool, but do it properly now. That's when maybe the playing does matter as well.
Well, that's such a good attitude to have, and it's so fun for so little people have that kind of attitude when it comes to all sorts of work. So that's fantastic, man.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best lessons. Years and years ago, when I was studying in Australia, there was one of Wynton Marsalis's trumpet section guys came and gave a clinic to us, and he said that if you're putting a band together or if you're getting called for a band, make sure you're always the worst kind of guy, the worst player in the room.
Yeah, right. Because I
Because
don't
that
know.
means that constantly your aim is having great people around you when you're
Yeah,
lifting up. Yeah.
yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And we come to the final quadruple barreled question. Because you got so much to offer, man. Like you've done so much as a session musician. Okay, so you're an Australian working full time as a session musician in the US. Tell me the story of how that happened, and if anyone wants to follow your footsteps, how to get in, and what are the do's and don'ts of the music industry, as far as getting that far?
How did it begin for me? When I was working in Australia a few years ago, I was working a little bit and doing a lot of sound engineering and stuff, and I decided that I wanted to be somewhere else where I could mostly focus on making a career just from performing. So I decided to spend a few years looking around the world for somewhere to move.
Nice.
I went out and worked on a cruise ship line for a little while to fund that. So I would kind of go and do a contract, use that wage to then take trips around the world to have a look at places that I might think about moving to. And the last stop was Las Vegas. And when I got here, I realized that this was a place where it was viable to to work full time as a musician.
Oh, nice.
I think that in terms of advice for other people, um, I wish I kind of knew this before, but I wish I'd known it more clearly. If you want to do whatever job it is, I think probably your best bet, especially if you're a bit younger, is go to a place where that type of activity is based.
Yep. Yep.
You're No matter how committed you are or anything, if you want to be, my only experience is in music. You need to go to a place where that stuff happens.
Cool.
You can sit around at home, and yeah, I'll just reference music, but you can sit around at home practicing your instrument and being really great and putting up lots of Instagram videos and doing all that thing, but nobody's going to call you if you're in a city where there's no gigs.
Yep. True.
So you need to put yourself in the physical place. And I'm sure that there's a lot of different avenues now with social media and YouTube and stuff to actually make a career in music outside of that. But if you want to play or be in the studio or be on shows and stuff, you need to be where the people that book that stuff will see you, and
Yep.
they'll have your phone number and they'll call you and you can walk in there. And then and in terms of do's and don'ts, exactly what we said before: turn up on time and know the stuff. That's your entire job as a
Yep.
musician.
Yep.
I mean, there's a million other things involved in that as well, but that's that base level stuff. If I'm booking a gig and you turn up on time, you know the music, and you're a nice guy, I'll call you forever.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your insights into the industry. It's I'm pretty sure it's going to be really helpful for anyone
Oh, I hope so.
watching this to make their decisions and kind of like guide them through if they want to become a session musician. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for that, Andrew.
No problem. And also the other advice I would offer to is seek as much advice as you can. I still go and get lessons from people. I'll email, you know, famous guitarists and see if they've got a minute to talk and just suck in as much advice as you can.
Oh, nice.
Because if you try to make sure you're always the worst person in the room and go into every situation thinking that you know nothing, you'll be constantly learning.
Nice. Nice.
Which, yeah, that's helped me a lot as well.
Cool. Cool. Thanks, man. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.